Tim Walz is different. And that may be, interestingly, why Trump has been struggling. Walz and Harris together are hitting a nerve this week. Trump is on defense. He held an unusual press conference. He hasn't done one of those in a long time. He did that today. Walz is putting a spotlight on how MAGA and Trump are out of step in so many ways. And that if you have this stylistic heartland appeal, which I already walked through, and you combine that with the type of blue policies that actually resonate on education, on economic populism, giving kids lunch at school, well, that seems to be working. And they think they can win with that rather than going all the way over to some southern red, moderate, quote unquote, Democrat. The times are changing. And contrast that to what Trump is doing. If I just told you and showed you how instead of going to a red state in the center, they're going blue with just a red topping of culture, contrast that to Project 2025, which we've shown you is staffed by many conservatives in the Trump orbit, with Donald Trump used to praise at the Heritage Foundation and all that. News now, this photo that links Donald Trump directly to the Heritage president, which is the guy running the organization that pushes Project 2025. Quote, they're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for what our movement will do, is what Trump said. So it's notable that right now, amidst all this, Trump and some of his longest-serving, most loyal, most conservative and controversial Trump aides are trying to run from that. Very different from what Harris did in picking Walz.
Donald Trump is shook. With less than 90 days to go before the election, the race has taken a turn he clearly did not see coming. Last month, after the Republican National Convention, remember that? Just a few weeks ago? He was jubilant. I mean, Trump and his campaign clearly told every reporter they could, on and off the record, that they were going to coast to victory, that it was in the bag. In fact, Trump was already measuring the drapes in the Oval Office. Staffers were scrambling to call dibs on jobs in the administration. But of course, then, well, things changed. President Joe Biden did what few people thought possible, something remarkable and honorable, and decided to step aside from the race. The Democratic Party almost immediately coalesced around Vice President Kamala Harris as his replacement. The process to get to that point was wrenching, excruciating, and difficult, but it has very obviously transformed the race in a whole bunch of different ways. The Democratic campaign, with Kamala Harris rising to the top of the ticket, took in a record-breaking $310 million fundraising haul in July. Donald Trump raised less than half that amount over the same time period. The enthusiasm for the vice president has been palpable in the enormous crowds as she is growing in rally after rally after rally, and in the polling. A recent survey found that nearly half of all voters say that Harris becoming the nominee makes them more motivated to go to the polls. And there's been a definite shift in the numbers in the head-to-head polling. Harris now leads in the polling average nationally by more than 2 points. Joe Biden was down by more than 3 points before he dropped out. That's a 5-point swing, just doing the math in my head. And 5-point swings in an electorate this polarized are an enormous deal. The dynamics of this election have also been fully recast. With President Biden no longer running, Donald Trump is now the only elderly man in the race. He would be the oldest president ever inaugurated if he wins in November. He would have the nuclear codes at the age of 82. With the focus shifted away from Biden, it is easier to see that underneath the fake tan and the strange hairdo is a 78-year-old man, a man well past retirement age, seeking the most demanding and stressful job in the world. Don't forget, running for president, just running for the job, is about as exhausting an endeavor as you will find. I mean, at least normally the way it's done. And Donald Trump really does seem to be feeling it, which, no shade, I think I would be too if I were him. I mean, this week, he is doing exactly one campaign event in the solid red, safe state of Montana. Meanwhile, he's dumped the usual grueling travel schedule on his 40-year-old running mate, following Kamala Harris and Tim Walz all over the country in what the nation just dubbed a stalker tour. Today, Trump's sole public activity, the only thing he did publicly to campaign for president, did take him quite far, all the way down the hall of Mar-a-Lago to hold a press conference in front of a select group of reporters. The typically rambling, hour-long event took place in the dark and cavernous main living room, with Trump flanked by an ornate piano and 2 candelabras. The vibe a mix of Liberace and vampire. Looking really worn down and spent and exhausted, and like a man who is just not having any fun, the former president floundered from one absurdity to the next.
We have a lot of bad things coming up, and we're very close to a world war. In my opinion, we're very close to a world war. We were given Joe Biden, and now we're given somebody else. Heavy into the transgender world, heavy into lots of different worlds. You have people dying financially because they can't buy bacon. Everybody's going to be forced to buy an electric car, which they're not going to do because they don't want that. We have commercials that are at a level I don't think that anybody's ever done before. Nobody's spoken to crowds bigger than me. If you look at Martin Luther King, when he did his speech, his great speech, and you look at ours, same real estate, same everything, same number of people, if not, we had more. President Xi of China and I were very good friends. We met right here, right in that, except we had a beautiful sofa there. It's a hard room because it's very big, if you know. So this is worth $18 million. I know Willie Brown very well. In fact, I went down in a helicopter with him. We thought maybe this is the end. Trump was right about everything. I have been right about a lot.
Not right about going down in a helicopter with ex-San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown, something that had it happened, we would know about. Willie Brown, of course, saying today that, of course, never happened. Doesn't seem like it's likely the case that the Jan 6 crowd that assembles, that Trump could hurl them violently at the Capitol to overthrow the American constitutional republic, was as large as the famous March on Washington at which Martin Luther King gave the I Have a Dream speech. Trump also seems to have resigned himself to the fact that he will have to face off against Harris in front of the cameras, telling reporters he wants to appear now at 3 debates, including the one he'd already negotiated with Biden, although he got the order wrong and the network one. He wants to do a Fox one. But that was the one he tried to pull out of when Harris was at the top of the ticket. So then the vice president responded from the tarmac in Detroit before taking off for her next campaign stop in Phoenix.
Well, I'm glad that he's finally agreed to a debate on September 10th. I'm looking forward to it and hope he shows up.
Are you open to more debates?
I am happy to have that conversation about an additional debate for after September 10th, for sure.
Despite his claims today that he's looking forward to debating Kamala Harris, Trump still appears to be more than a little bit obsessed with his former opponent. He's been posting over his website like desperate, strange fan fiction about, quote, a big movement to bring back Crooked Joe. And there's like lots of folks in his orbit who are trying to will this to happen as if they can like pull off some Jedi mind trick and get Biden back on the ballot. Trump is really just underscoring the fact that he and his campaign, despite constantly saying that Biden was going to drop out, that he was going to be replaced at the last minute. This is the thing they said all the time. Somehow ended up woefully unprepared for that exact eventuality and not prepared to run against Kamala Harris. And nearly 3 weeks in, they still don't appear to have figured out how to do this, how to adjust their strategy. Because we are in a very different world, one where Donald Trump is no longer the clear favorite. It's a real race. He might lose it. And we all know Trump just cannot handle losing. He almost brought down the American experiment because of it. And that is why we have seen him swing wildly from overconfident to spiraling, whining, and very obviously miserable.
That was Donald Trump in June when it felt like every poll was trending in his direction. 2 months later, and Kamala Harris's ascent to the top of the Democratic ticket has this race looking like it is in a dead heat. The nonpartisan Cook Political Report is moving Arizona, Georgia, and Nevada from lean Republican to toss-up. CBS News Executive Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins us now. Anthony, thanks so much for being with us.
Great to talk to you, Adriana.
So, Anthony, break it down. What is the current state of the race at this moment?
It's close, in one word. This is what illustrates it. Here's the map. We're going to spend a lot of time with this map over the next couple of months. The states that are in white are the battleground states, and they are all close. They are very close in all of our CBS News estimates. They're close in a lot of other polling as well. They will decide the race, and so that makes the race overall close. For context, Joe Biden, when he was at the top of the ticket, was in fact trailing Donald Trump, in some places substantially. But now there's been this big reset. Now the race is tight with Harris at the top of the ticket. And I just want to show you a little bit of the story of why. First of all, a lot of voters saying in general, over 2/3, saying that they think the country is ready to elect a black woman as president. But I want to show you this as well. Harris has consolidated the Democratic base. She's got 96% of Democrats with her. And that's on the back of an increase in enthusiasm among Democrats, more Democrats saying that they're likely to vote, that they're going to turn out. That's something that wasn't happening as much with Joe Biden, also even with independents. And I'll show you this, too, because we talk a lot about these demographic groups. Harris doing better among black voters than Joe Biden was, a core part of the constituency. So movement there, as well as increased enthusiasm and saying that they're going to turn out. That's the underpinning of the change in the dynamic, Adriana.
Those are really weak spots for Biden. Anthony, what is the larger picture? What's the context that people should keep in mind going forward?
I think it's going to be, number one, watch those battleground states, okay? Number two, watch these enthusiasm numbers if they can sustain, so that among Democrats and including also among Republicans, it's that enthusiasm that leads to express propensity to vote. And that's something that you want to watch because there are so few undecided, so few voters who would even consider the opposing candidate at this point, that turnout really matters. So this boost that we've seen in excitement, in enthusiasm, sustaining that is going to be critical for the Democrats, and it's certainly going to be important for the Republicans to sustain what they've had, Adriana.